colher um futuro melhor para o planeta, com mais qualidade de vida para todo mundo, depende das sementes que a gente planta hoje. É por acreditar nisso que a Suzano integra em seu modelo de negócio a sustentabilidade e a inovação. No início de 2020, assumimos o compromisso de, até o ano de 2030, promover a remoção líquida de 40 milhões de toneladas de CO2 da atmosfera, tirar 200 mil pessoas da linha de pobreza em nossas áreas de atuação, oferecer 10 milhões de toneladas de produtos de origem renovável que possam substituir plástico e outros produtos derivados do petróleo. Suzano, nós plantamos o futuro.
Good evening, good morning, good.
Olá, boa noite ou bom dia. Eu não sei onde.
But it's great to start the third part of our AI experience. And before we start with Somaye, and she has a great speech for tonight, talking about bias, talking about fairness. I would like to start our day, our night, according to your location, with some more details about the news that happened today and what is going to happen tomorrow in our AI experience. Then just to share my screen here, just a sec here. Then this week we have from Monday till Friday many different attractions, and this I would like to thank first uh, to our sponsors that are with us. Semantics. Let me put in the right slide here because we have some technical points here. So nowadays, okay, now just a second. Here we are, and we would like to thank for our sponsors. We are talking about Suzano. We are talking about A2O.ai, and we are talking about semantics. All of them are supporting us to make this amazing event with you. And we also want to ask you if you want to receive your certificate, your daily certificate, you just need to do our check-in. There is our QR code, and also here our Bitly, and where you can make your check-in. Or you can use your cell phone to take out our QR code, or you can type bit.ly the bar there I2AI XP. This is what we have for your check-in. With your check-in, you are going to concur every day for an amazing kit, amazing award, amazing prize here. The prize for today is this one, semantics. This one for our sponsor, semantics, amazing one. This kit with this, I love it with this cap, with this nice glass here of water. Very nice. Be you can be the lucky one to receive that. Okay. Then let me start the evening. I have some news for you. I think that the first one is every night at 7 p.m. we are going to start with one amazing case from America. This one tonight we are going to have Somaye Nikpur. She's lead AI strategy for the government of Canada. And in a few minutes, I'm going to ask her to join us and make a great presentation. Tomorrow, we have a Tulsi Doshi from Google Product. She's a Google Product lead. She also talks about machine learning, fairness, and responsible AI. It's a nice complementation from today's speech. On Wednesday, we have Brent Barron. He's director from the strategic project from CIFAR. CIFAR is the Canadian Research Center for Artificial Intelligence National Strategies and so on. And on Thursday, we are going to have Dev Karan Maletia. He's from the public sector growth and strategy lead of Blue Dot. Blue Dot is the amazing startup that identified COVID even before the CDC, the other disease control centers around the globe. I startup using AI identify COVID even before the most powerful nations. This is the amazing power of this nice technologies. Just for you to know, we Funai to AI is a non-profit association. We develop many kind of events during the whole year. This year we have so many different events like you can see here. In January, we start with the projects, the secrets of projects in AI. On February, we have ethical challenges for AI international event. On March, we have AI vertical talking about the applications of AI in different kind of sectors. On March, also we have our summit from retail. On April, we have our marathon of AI. On May, we have the summit of AI on agribusiness, and so on. See how many events we have. And now, right now, we are preparing the first evening for Brazilians, yeah, of AI experience. We have a great morning, a great midday in the break of lunch also, and now we are going to start our evening. On November, set on your agenda, on your schedule, we are going to have AI journey. That's a kind of MBA in 1 week of all different subjects that you want to know about AI. You can know that in November, you can have all in 1 week. It's an amazing event. And also in November, we are going to have our famous A2AI Awards, awarding the best professionals, companies, startups, researchers on AI in Brazil. Okay. Then, if you like to make these events happening, you also can help us to sponsor these events, like Semantics did, like Suzano did, like A2O.ai did, like FIA did, like EducaCross did. Then there is many. It's very important for a non-profit organization to count on kind of sponsorship like we are having with our sponsors tonight. Okay. Without any more delay, I would like to introduce yourself to yourself, Somaye Nikpur. I hope that I'm speaking right, Somaye. Somaye will talk about bias, fairness, and the role of AI strategy. And for you that didn't know Somaye before, just a small presentation for a small introduction for her. Somaye Nikpur is a lead for AI strategists at federal government of Canada. She works at the intersection of AI, data, analytics, and policy to help drive real, tangible results. She designs AI and analytics roadmaps based on organizational readiness. She had more than 10 years. 10 years. How it could be so young? 10 years of experience in conceptualization business problems into analytics projects. She has been working with various levels of business stakeholders, from business experts to senior management, to identify new business opportunities. And she started her professional career on the economics, she's PhD track, with an undergraduate background in mathematical economics. Oh, wow, mathematical economics. She started getting interested in programming and less interested in abstract academic research. Prior to her current role, Somaye worked as a research advisor at the federal government of Canada, where she was experimenting with machine learning models to explore whether these models could be used to improve service delivery. Somaye holds a PhD in economics from the University of Ottawa, and she's passionate about AI ethics and is currently collaborating with Aggregate Intellect as an AI ethics team owner. She curates and generates original content that will help others navigate through various AI ethics topics and concepts. I also would like to thank, because Somaye is here due to a great effort of Canadian Embassy here in Brazil and also in Canada, I do believe, to make an effort to bring her and other colleagues of Canada to take part of this event. Yeah, and I would like to personally to thank to Sheila Dantas and all our colleagues from Brazilian Office of Canada Embassy here. So Malia, be welcome, and it's nice to have you here. Go ahead and explain such a nice topic, yeah, as you bring to us tonight. This floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Alexandre, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. So hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. So I would like to thank the organizing committee for all they did to make this participation very easy and enjoyable. So before I start, I also would like to mention that the opinion expressed today are solely my own and does not represent the views of my employer. So I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. So I hope you guys can see my screen well. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now we can see Sumaya.
Sounds good. Great. So today, as Alexander mentioned, I'm going to talk about the algorithmic bias and different type of bias that can happen during a machine learning pipeline. Then I will continue my presentation and talk about fairness and various metrics that are currently exist to measure fairness in machine learning models. Then I will continue my presentation and talk about the role of AI strategy in supporting fair AI systems. So AI, artificial intelligence, holds great economic, social, medical, security, and environmental promise. So AI system can help people acquire new skills and training. It designs and deliver faster production times and quicker cycles. It reduces energy usage, provides real-time environmental monitoring for pollution and air quality. It can enhance cybersecurity defense, reduce healthcare inefficiencies, and create new kind of enjoyable experiences and interaction for people, and improve real-time transaction services and connect people across the world. In long term, we can imagine AI enabling breakthroughs in medicine, basics and applied sciences, managing complex systems, and creating currently unimagined products and services. For all these reasons and many more, researchers like myself are excited with the potential uses of AI systems to help manage some of the world's hardest problems and improve human lives. However, in order to realize this potential, the challenges with the AI development have to be addressed. In an article by Oxford University that published in 2017, 14 topics were identified as areas of concern for the safe and beneficial development of AI, both in short term and long term. And fairness, algorithmic bias, and in general, AI ethics is one of those areas of concern. So we, like human beings, we like to think we are rational, but in reality, we are prone to hundreds of proven biases that causes us to think and act irrationally. For example, even thinking we are rational despite the evidence of irrationality in others is known blind spot bias. So there is a long list of human biases, more than 150 of them. As you can see in this infographic, there are about 180 of them, I believe. So people often are not aware of their biases. So human brain uses a few simple tricks to pick out a bits of information that are most likely going to be useful in some way or another. So when our brain receives every piece of information, at the same time, it assesses the information, assess the situation, applies a decision, and simulates the future. So we know that humans are biased. So why do we care about algorithmic bias? Why does it matter? I'm going to name a few reasons. So first, algorithm and human decision makings are used differently. We cannot treat human decision making and algorithmic decision making interchangeably. There is this common misconception that people assume algorithms are objective and error-free, but that's not true. Humans are accountable towards the decision they make, and however, there is not a very well established appeal process and no ways to raise mistake when an algorithm makes a wrong decision in a systematic manner. The second reason is that algorithm can scale in a way that people do not, and therefore the bias can escalate at a larger scale. And the third one is that machine learning systems can create feedback loops. I'm going to explain this by an example. So imagine an algorithm that predicts that there's going to be more crime in one neighborhood than the other. So therefore, there's going to suggest sending more officers to that neighborhood that they expect to have more crime. This may result in more arrests because there are more officers present in that neighborhood. So the data that goes back to the algorithm the data then goes back to the algorithm that can cause even recommend sending more officers to that specific neighborhood. And therefore the results can result to more arrests and so on. So basically this model is controlling the next round of data that gets into the model. So technology is a power, and with that comes a responsibility. According to Statistica.com, as of July 2020, out of the global population, 59% have internet access and 7% have a college degree and less than 1% know how to code. So people creating the tech should be representative of people using the tech. As machine learning are increasingly used to determine important real-world decisions such as loan approval, credit card application, even parole decision and recruitment decision, it is necessary for the AI community to minimize the unintentional impact and discrimination due to these models. So bias can be introduced in a machine learning pipeline at different stages. So bias can be introduced into the during the design and data or modeling and coding, and during the application and the development. For example, during the data, depending on the data sources, the way that we collect the data, and also even how we process the data, the way that we query our databases. And it can also happen during modeling and coding, and when a model for example, when a model is making a decision, why is making this decision, and so and basically what mechanism do we use to explain the results of this model, and what is this result supported by the evidence, what sort of optimization metrics we use. All these stages, they are prone to some sort of biases. So besides this code, data, and modeling, as I mentioned, bias can also happen during the design and even in production and deployment. There is a very good study by Merabi and others that very nicely summarizes all various type of biases that exist in this pipeline. So the bias in data can exist in many shapes and forms, which can lead to unfairness outcome downstream in the pipeline. For example, using unbalanced data can create biases against unrepresented groups. Another example could be the way we use and analyze our data, which can create bias when we do not consider different subgroups in the data. And in some contexts, such as medical and health services, these biases can be even more dangerous. For example, in a medical domain, there are many instances that the data is skewed towards certain population, which again can have dangerous consequences for unrepresented represented communities. This is a very good read, this paper. I highly recommend this paper if you'd like to learn more detail about various type of biases that exist in the pipeline. Because the underlying data rather than the algorithm itself are most often the main source of the issues, I'm going to briefly talk a little bit about the data biases. I'm going to talk about 5 different data properties that in the next few slides that are very most commonly we face while we are processing the data. These properties give us a way to measure the differences in a set of the data that we collect versus some target population that we want to study. And I like to bring your attention to this fact that sometimes the type of bias might not always be measurable directly, but we might see some distortion in the data that could be the sign of that bias. The first of these biases are population biases, which as it says, the differences in demographic characteristics between the population represented in our data sets and the target population. A very good study by Harjita in 2007 analyzes different users' demographics on social media, and it shows that women are more likely to use Pinterest, Facebook, and Instagram, while on online forum are popular among men. So this concludes that different demographics are using different social media differently. This will have a lot of implication for those people who are using the social media data. The second of these biases are behavioral biases, which are the differences in user behavior across platform and data sets. A good example is this study by Miller and others in 2016 that shows that people misinterpret the emotions and the meaning of emoji-based communication, and there is a potential for miscommunication. So this image shows the grinding face for smiling eyes emoji character on various platforms. What this image tells us is that there is a there's quite a bit of potential for miscommunication. This figure tells us that if an iPhone user sends a grinding face with a smiley eyes to a Windows user such as Samsung, LG, or Nexus, the iPhone user is sending a mildly negative emoji to someone who will receive it as a relatively positive one. So they found that for 9 out of 22 emojis, the average difference between these two platforms is greater than 2 points on a scale of 0 to 5. The next of these biases are the content production biases, which are the lexical, synthetic, semantic, and structural differences in the content generated by the users. In the study by Rao and others, they show that the use of languages varies across and within countries and populations, and this can impact the content production on various platforms. The study by Mukano and others, they show that they provide actually a map of language polarization for New York City, and they show that in all districts and municipalities, a second language is spoken, and certain languages are more common than others, and this can affect the content created on social media. And the last two biases I'm going to talk about first is the linking biases, which shows the differences in the attributes of a network obtained from users' connection and interactions and activities. The study by Gilbert shows that online social network formation depends on factors and attributes external to the social platform, factors such as geography, age, even gender, and dynamics of the offline relation has impact to the content created on the social media platform. And the last one, but not least, are the temporal biases, which are the differences in the populations and behavior over time. Now, this study by Hanek shows that introducing a new feature or even changing an existing feature can impact the usage pattern on platforms over time, and even it's going to be different across various demographics. The various demographics are going to respond differently to certain changes on social media platforms. So now that we better understand bias, so in order to minimize bias, how do we define and measure fairness? What it means for a decision to be fair? This table shows a collection of papers and studies with the most prominent definition and metrics of fairness. And as you can see, there are so many definitions of fairness. Arvind Narayan, an interesting tutorial by Arvind Narayan, which I highly recommend, identifies at least 21 different definitions of fairness, and he says that even this is a non-exhaustive list. There is this important factor that the research done so far has revealed there, and it is that there's a potential trade-offs between different definition and matrix of fairness and between fairness goal and other objectives. For example, the study by John Kleinberg shows that a machine learning model cannot comply with more than a few definition of fairness at the same time, except under a very specific condition. Okay. So most of the conversation about the various definition and matrix of fairness has been focused on the individual fairness and group fairness. Individual fairness, as it shows, means that treating similar individuals similarly, and group fairness means that to make the outcome and the predictions the same across the groups, and particularly for potentially vulnerable groups. Let me explain you this with an example. As you can see in this image, equality and equity are both definition of fairness, but they have very different outcome in a similar situation. In the picture on the left, you can see that everybody has been given the same tool in order to be able to watch the game. However, the outcome is that some of the people are not able to watch the game. But on the right hand side, everybody has been given a tool which allows them to, even the tools are different, it allows them to watch the game. So the final outcome is equal for all of them, even though they have been treated differently. So it is very important to select the right type of metrics and definition for their fairness, because a wrong metric can lead to harmful decision. So based on the above mentioned papers and the literature, I'm going to very briefly talk about two metrics of very commonly used metrics of group fairness that that is used in the machine learning project, which are going to be demographic parity and equal opportunity. So demographic parity means that the proportion of each part of a protected class, which could be gender, race, should receive the positive outcome at the equal rates. So this positive outcome could be getting to the university, getting a loan, or getting a credit card, or even being shown an ad. So the question is that when do we use demographic parity? We use this when we want to change the state of our current world and we want to improve it. So for example, we want to see more minority groups getting to the top management positions. So maybe a recruitment system, they can use this measure. So when we use again this matrix, when historical biases have affected the quality of our data, for example, a machine learning solution trained to hire software engineers where no women has been hired before. Or we use this definition to support unprivileged group and to prevent reinforcement of historical biases. For example, when we are setting policies that are going to penalize non-inclusive behavior, especially when we want to support vulnerable communities, vulnerable people, this is the definition to be used. The next definition of fairness that I'm going to talk about is the equal opportunity, which states that each group should get the positive outcome at equal rates, assuming that people in this group qualify for it. So we use equal opportunity as the matrix for fairness when there is a strong emphasis on predicting the positive outcome correctly. For example, we need to be very good at detecting a fraudulent transaction. We also use this definition of this matrix when introducing a false positive is not costly to the user nor to the company. So wrongly notifying a customer about a fraudulent activity or a transaction will not be necessarily expensive to the customer nor to the bank. So it is important to recognize that bias exists in real world in all industries and among all humans. So the question to ask is how to detect and mitigate such biases and ensure having a fair AI system. And the reality and the fact is that there are so many challenges when it comes to designing and building fair AI system, which I'm going to name a few of them and talk about those in the next slide. So the first one is the user perception. For example, a better understanding is needed about which attributes are actually sensitive. In practice, sensitive attributes vary with the use case. For instance, some attributes are obvious. For example, race, gender, and age in some contexts is not a sensitive attribute, but sometimes yes. So while other attributes are more vaguely defined or they are domain specific, for example, in the medical context, or even defining, for example, physical attractiveness or athletic form, and that is used in certain health apps. So therefore, a lot of research is required to understand these features more in depth and define them more clearly. The second one is that is about the value alignment. Another problem is basically the value alignment, which needs to be taught to an AI decision-making system. And it is basically translating human values into mathematical constraints and equations, which is not an easy task to do. The third one is actually the trust, transferring trust from people to a computer or a digital artifact is challenging because the logic behind its reasoning is often barely understood. So researchers in the field of explainable AI aim to create a series of machine learning techniques that produce more explainable model, that an interpretable model to obtain people's trust in the machine learning system while maintaining a high level of accuracy. Transparency is another challenge. Several challenges exist when adopting AI system in practice. Regulatory initiatives such as the GDPR enforces transparent algorithms, but further research is required to accommodate transparent decision-making systems. And another area of fact is also about the design and economic implication. So when it comes to designing AI systems, deriving and testing design principles that guides the decision making, such as choosing even the definition of fairness, is really important and is very essential. A fair AI system has direct economic implication in the context of performance and fairness trade-off. Research shows that fairness is achieved at the cost of lowering prediction accuracy and performances for certain features, and this has implication for the companies. And this implication, unfortunately, has been widely overlooked in adoption of AI system. And the last one, but not least, are the governance challenges. Designing and implementing a fair AI system is strongly linked to governance. In a report by AI Now Institute in 2018, it has been argued that internal governance structures are failing to ensure the fairness of AI system. More research is needed to investigate the effectiveness of different governance structure for managing AI system and their relation to other processes in an organization. And perhaps there is a need to establish new management framework with the goal to achieve AI fairness. In order to be successful with an AI effort, companies and organizations need to transform and improve what they are already doing today. So most companies begin their AI journey in silos across the organization. Maybe it's within the finance to have more accurate forecasting, or in marketing to better understand the high value customer, or even quite possibly for recruitment. Running AI in silos can be highly successful and bring significant return to investment. However, in order to ensure fairness and accountability for the decision made by the AI system, it has to tie to an overarching organizational wide strategy. Through an AI strategy, CEOs and the top management teams, they can lead the way on bias and fairness and ensure proper guardrails are in place. It would be out of the scope of this presentation and not enough time to get into development of an AI strategy, but among others, I'm going to focus on two pillars of AI strategy that can ensure ethical adoption and implementation of AI technologies. First is that AI needs a robust and reliable technology and data infrastructure. Without the support of a well-functioning data infrastructure, AI is useless. A robust AI system relies heavily on a stable and technology infrastructure and usable data. So this infrastructure must include support for the entire data chain, from the data collection and capturing to cleaning, storage, governance, security, analysis, analytics, and even this publication of the results, and all of this in real time. So a good infrastructure allows for establishing feedback loops where we can measure the success and failure, and we can flag those and analyze them and action upon. The second one is the legal, ethical, and governance framework. The use of AI raises many potentially ethical issues. The need for the responsible approach to AI is ever more increasing, because as organizations scale up the use of AI, capturing sensitive and personal data about individuals is increasing. And currently, due to the disruption of this pandemic, collection of personal data has been facilitated. A lot of us are doing many tasks these days online that even 2 years ago we wouldn't even think about that, doing those stuff online. So a lot of personal information is collected even without sometimes us noticing what sort of information is collected on our behalf. So already social networks and internet giants know significantly more about our day-to-day habits and work, and than perhaps our loved ones, and sometimes even perhaps even ourselves. The second thing is that organization transition into newer business models, the value of collecting and using data will increase. Currently, companies are assigning dollar value to every bit of information they collect, and they calculate those risk reward ratios associated with each data point. So Under this situation and conditions, there's a temptation to extract more value from the data they have collected, and this can push organization to overstep ethical boundaries. For example, if they start selling the data without obtaining the consent of the data owners. And the third one is that despite the importance of ethics, there is a general lack of overarching guidelines or benchmark for responsible AI practices. Without a single established ethical framework, each organization and industry will have to determine its own standards and limits, and this can be very chaotic. Before I close my presentation, I'd like to leave you with a few resources about principles and recommendations developed by experts in the fields to mitigate the risks associated with AI. I think it is important to ensure that our AI system has been given enough time to be tested for safety and unintended consequences, and also to do our best that an AI system will do what we really want and not harming human in any misguided attempts. So these resources, the legal framework on AI developed by European Commissions, and also the ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI by European Union, or OECD principle on AI, and the Asilomar AI principle, which is basically, it was developed during a conference in 2017 by a group of AI researchers from academia, industry, and leaders from economics, law, ethics, and philosophy. And I should have mentioned that there's reset framework and guideline, ethical framework and guidelines for AI developed by UNESCO, which is going to come to effect later this year, is also very good resources to consult with. I would like to conclude my presentation with few takeaways. So education and awareness about AI ethics is essential. All of us in one way or another have a role in our company organization's AI journey. The more we know about how to design fair AI systems and develop them and implement them, the more we can guide our company, our organization on a right path to ethical AI. AI is a powerful set of technology and it is complicated. We need to understand what we are doing with it and why we are using that system. An interdisciplinary collaboration among researchers is required to ensure ethical development of AI systems. An AI strategy needs to be built on a solid foundation with a purposeful approach, a robust and reliable technology and infrastructure, and a thoughtful approach to ethics. So I would like to conclude here and open the floor for questions.
Sumaye, there is so many deep information inside your presentation, so many how can I say, hidden questions that is even difficult to start. But I have some questions for you, Sumaye, and I would like to bring these questions here. I don't know if I mentioned to you before in our preparation for this conversation here that the AQAI is also part of the now new formed council for the Brazilian national strategy, and we are working together with some other institutions to talk about governance, AI governance. That is a very specific talk here, and very important one in my point of view. And you were mentioning about some different kind of bias, the many different definition of fairness. What you can give to people that are watching us right now about some real life example of bias in machine learning model? Do you have any or some examples that can show how could be the impact of data that is biased by any reason? I think that you could help people to understand the problem.
Sure. So as I said, so it's very context driven. So identifying the bias, addressing it, mitigating it, and identify the best metrics to measure the fairness. And it also depends on the role of the individuals in the team. So let's say if most of the time, the responsibility is on the data scientist to understand these biases in the data and identify what would be a good metrics to measure fairness. But as you can see, that's not enough, because a lot of times, especially in companies, data scientists are under a lot of pressure to deliver, to have the products ready to go, and they might not have sometimes enough time or enough encouragement from the senior management to focus more on digging deeper, identify a lot of biases existing in the data. I would say that depending on the role of the individual in the organization, we all can start from somewhere. So even I feel like the business analysts, the people who know the context, who have the business knowledge about a specific use case of AI, are one of the very good resources to understand the issues around the data, understand the biases that exist around the data. It's not a one-man job sort of thing to find out what are the existing biases in our system and how to start attacking them. As I said, it's a multidisciplinary thing. The best way of attacking this is at the design stage of any AI system or any machine learning system, bringing all people from different backgrounds who have stakes at using this machine learning system, at this AI system, and start a discussion about, okay, what do we want to do with this system? What is the outcome of this system when it's used in production? Who's going to be impacted by this system, by this model, and in what way? How do we define a negative outcome with the machine learning, with the result of this machine learning? These are all the questions that has to be asked early on during a machine learning pipeline. When the model is ready and ready to production, that's not a good time to start evaluating a model and see if it's fair or not, or if there are any issues with it. There's certainly going to be something, but the best way to start is at the design stage. It's, as I said, a multidisciplinary thing, and education. The more, I mean, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was not a lot of talk about around biases. There were discussion around it, but now there is this global awareness about the impact of these systems in our life, because we are using it on a very simple task in everyday life. So people are realizing that it can impact their life. So I feel like the first step is just educate ourselves to learn as much as we can in the context that we are working. As I mentioned, if you're working in a health context, the issues, the biases and fairness in that context is very different than if you're working in a service delivery industry. The biases in that context is different. So understand what are the important factors in the field that you're working on, and see how you can identify some of those biases, and get in touch with the technical team, with the people who are developing this system. They would love to hear what could be some of the possible things that can go wrong with these models down the road, so they can start addressing them early on in the process.
Great. So and we have actually, I think next month or November, I'm not sure, but we have a specific course in A2AI talking about governance, the challenge of governance and AI projects. There is many challenges, and I completely agree that it's not a task for one man or one woman. It's a task for many people inside an organization that understand the problem and try to see if you are doing the right approach, and the data that we collected before to make the models are well balanced and represent that reality, and help to solve that problem that they aim to be solved. Great point, so Maria. And I have some other questions here. While our audience also can send us some different questions here. You mentioned 5 different types of bias that you brought in your presentation: population bias, the behavioral bias, content production bias, linking biases, and temporal biases. Which one you would name as the most dangerous in terms of social impact? Do you think that there is one that we should be more aware, or it doesn't matter, or I don't know? I would like to get your opinion about that.
I wouldn't say one of them is more dangerous than the others. All of them, they require the same attention, because in one way or another, someone is going to be impacted by those. But the important thing is that some of these biases are obvious, are easy to detect. So let's say, for example, population biases. You can easily detect that in the data if you know what you're looking for. But not all of them are. I mean, when it comes, let's say, the content biases, or especially behavioral biases, these exposes this type of biases that requires digging deeper into the data and look for other features, other signals that might actually flag those biases. So I guess all of them require definitely to be looked into, but perhaps let's say, let me give you an example. Let's say in the medical context, so gender, age, and even race, they cannot be a sensitive attributes or being biased towards it, because let's say we are all different human beings, so we are naturally built differently. So we expect that, let's say, if a machine learning model is detecting a malignant tumor, to differentiate between what gender I am, or what age I am. However, when it comes, let's say, to a
I think that Somaye has a problem, if I'm not wrong. I was not sure if it was my problem or her problem, but right now I think that something happened with her. Yeah? I was looking to myself if it was myself or not. But it's good to have such a deep topic. Then I think Somaye need to have a glass of water, kind of it, and so deep topic. But she's back. Great,
yes, I don't
great.
know what happened,
Uh,
but yeah, I got disconnected for a
this
few
is good. This
seconds.
is good. I was afraid that I was the one that drops, but I see that you have the this problem. No problem. We were listening to you in the middle of, you were saying that depending on the context it could be easier identified when you have a population bias, but in case of health, and you are continues to explain what could happen in the case of health, and
Exactly.
you was given an example of cancer, if I'm not wrong. Okay, I have more questions here for you. So my there is another one that I think that I would like to hear about your opinion. You mentioned there is many different ways or definitions of that, let's say. And if you would name some criteria to select which definition I should use in my project, what would be? How can you explain or teach a person to say, oh, let's consider fairness? If you could give him more step by step or kind of a perspective, would be great, because it's a very important topic. I think that you raised now.
Yeah. I'm going to do my best to answer this question. So I'm not sure about the step-by-step question, but let's say regarding a fairness, it's usually a group fairness that we are looking for. So if we are having a system that is going to make decision for a big number of people, so we want that system to treat them all equally. So we want an equitable outcome. So that's if it comes to having an equitable outcome for everyone. So let's say imagine there's a service delivery for a specific sort of service, and we want everyone to receive the same service. In this sort of cases, we exactly go for the population, I mean, addressing that definition of the fairness that are providing the same outcome for all the population. However, if let's say if you are looking for a case that certain individuals with due to certain vulnerabilities, they require certain attentions and they need to have more they need to get more outcomes from a machine learning decision-making system. In that context, you use a different sort of definition. So I would say maybe as a first step is that what is the outcome of the machine learning system and how many people is going to be affected by that system. And from them, I kind of do some sort of and maybe a reverse engineering, and I start taking the next question. Okay, who are these people, and in what way they're going to be impacted? What would be some of these negative outcomes? So how we can measure that? And you just step by step, you get to the point that you narrow down and find out, okay, there's a specific criteria and feature which I want to make sure that it doesn't happen in the outcome of the machine learning model. And that's where you sit down and translate that to a mathematical equation that one of this definition of fairness is going to be applicable to it. But as I mentioned, this is not an exhaustive way of doing things. There's going to be cases that even we use a definition of fairness and we measure that the system is fair, but at the end, this is an AI system. It's not a human making decision system. So that's why it is always recommended that use a human in the loop. So that if there is a system that has human life impact, I personally think that there shouldn't be an AI system making that decision. There should always be a human who vet that decision, who did that human in the loop. But there are decisions that is actually using an AI system, let's say showing an ad, wouldn't have an impact on human life. So in those cases, it's even if there's an issue regarding the outcome of that ad, it wouldn't impact the individual in a negative way. But when you in cases that it has a human life impact, then I would say it certainly shouldn't be just an AI system. It has to be a human in the loop for sure.
Great, so I think that you address well, because sometimes we can design a system that are, how I would say, very accurate, but still it can fail. And human beings are more flexible in terms of understanding that you have the empathy, they have many other issues that are, it's much more difficult to be designed in an AI model. And this is a very important point. If you can add a human into the loop for critical decisions, it could make the best of it. You can use the computer power to make some kind of classification, organization, or help the human to be fast enough to take the right decision. And if you can combine human plus machines systems, I think that we can take the best of it. Yeah? Just get to the last questions here. You started to point out very fast about national strategies and frameworks, national and global frameworks. How do you see the new regulations that are being discussed in many different countries? Do you think that it's a good solution to solve this problem, such as bias and fairness in machine learning models? Do you think that the right approach is to regulate it by country regulations or global regulations? How do you see this perspective of making it becoming a law, not more a decision of people or thinking on the back of the benefit from the society? How do you see that?
I think that's a way to go. I mean, certain countries have done a lot better than others. I mean, it's good to have guidelines and principle, but eventually the goal is to turn these principle and guidelines into actionable items, into legislation and law that can be enforced. So people have this right to challenge a decision that is made by the system. So GDPR has done really well on that respect. Especially people have this right to challenge even the data that they want, their personal data, not to be used for certain system the machine learning development of machine learning model. But not every country is abiding by GDPR. So in Europe, it's mandatory, and with all the countries that have contracts with Europe, but not, let's say, in Africa. So how this is going to be monitored, and when people are using information collected from African countries, for example? So it's definitely I feel like at the global stage we are all on the right track, but it requires we need to expedite things, but there are a lot of effort going on. There are a lot of institutions across the world. They are doing research on the policy area, on the legal aspects of it, and then kind of starting to push the governments to regulate this technology. It's not an easy undertaking, because developing regulation, it's going to be specific for each industry, and it will require a lot of work. But eventually, there should be some sort of a mechanism for taking the system accountable toward any decision making, and also taking them accountable for any information they collect and use, and not sharing it with other third parties or other organizations, and sort of protect those personal data.
Great point. Great point. It's a difficult task to regulate all these ethical principles, but I think that is one of the possibilities that we have in terms of not allow how can I say, bad intention companies or people to make the worst of it in the usage of technology.
Yes.
So Maya, thank you very much for your time, for your presentation, for your support here in the event, in taking our doubts here. Do you have a final comment or a final message for our audience? Yeah, welcome, because we're getting to the end of it.
No, thank you. Just thank you for having me. It was a great pleasure to have this discussion with you and present here. And yeah, keep learning as I'm doing it. I'll keep learning too, because this is an ever-growing field. Our interaction with technology is increasing every day. Every day there are new ways of interacting and sharing our data with online platforms. So the more we learn how our data, our personal data is used in their system, the more we can help to guide this global sort of consortium, these global trends to protect ourselves and also ensure the ethical use of this systems.
Oh, great. So Maya, thank you very much again for your participation. I hope to see you in our next event. Yeah. And we are keeping just the first day. Today is just the first day. Yeah. And I would like to come back here for our agenda for tomorrow before you turn off from our audience. Just to remember that this is the first day of our AI experience. For tomorrow, we are going to start the day with the Brazilian case. Roberto Andrade Mansur from Suzano will talk about how a centenary industry, a centennial, I would say, industry worked with a mindset of startup, a startup soul or a startup mindset. At 8 a.m. Brazilian time, São Paulo time, Brasilia time, we are starting with him. In the lunchtime, we have an interview with him, with Daniel Garbuglio, how to adopt a journey of AI well succeed inside my own company. This is a very nice interview. I know Daniel. Daniel is doing a great job bringing H2O.ai to Brazil. It's a H2O.ai is one of the most important platform of AI, a global platform of AI models, and it's very nice to see the work that he's doing here in Brazil. It's tomorrow at 1 p.m. Brazilian time for you that want to join us in the interview. Later on, we are going to have 3 selected startups from Portugal. Yeah, we are going to have News AI, Newsroom, and we're going to have Apples. It's very nice. 3 startups going to tell more about what they are doing with three elevator pitch of 7 minutes. It will be amazing to have them also with us. It will be Matt Wade, explainable AI enables the world's transition to trustworthy AI. We are going to have Kelvin Fernandez, unlocking business capabilities using data intelligence from New York, and also Jenny Romano from the Newsroom, fight misinformation and promote plurality online. And in the evening, in the afternoon, I would say, we are going to have Joanna Paiva talking about the new era of personalized medicine. She's the CTO and co-founder of iLove, a very important Portuguese startup that's getting bigger and bigger. All the solutions that they are developing. And to finish the day, we're going to have responsible AI Google from Tulsi Doshi. She's the Google product lead of machine learning, fairness, and responsible AI. She's going to have to be with us in the evening of Brazil at 7 p.m. Okay? Don't forget, just this week, we have 400 reais of discount for you to spend in any of our certificates. That's just this week. Don't miss it. You can use it in our certificate AI for business. You can use it in our certificate Analytics Foundation, or you can use it in our certificate AI Technologies Foundation. I would also like to thank our sponsors, A2O.ai, Suzano Semex for this day, also Educa Cross and FIA Pro Info. And to finish the day with the prize, as I told you before, we're going to how can I say, we're going to put a prize for those that did the check-in in our, we're going to sortear, I forgot how to, random, I hope. I forgot how to say in English, to random a prize for this person that was selected, and they awarded for the prize for tonight from the semantics is, let me check here, it's Arnaldo Couto, Paula de Couto. Oh, this is great. Arnaldo, it's also, if I'm not wrong, he's associated of I2AI. Congrats, Arnaldo, for the first prize of the event, the kit from Semantics. Yeah, and I hope to see you tomorrow in our event as well, starting at 8 a.m. Okay, nice to see you. Bye bye. So it was a great pleasure. I would like to thank you, everybody. Bye bye. See you tomorrow.